My name's Riley, 24, former video editor, occasional screw-up, and currently the proud owner of 1 suitcase, 2 broken contracts, and 1 bruised ego. 3 weeks ago, I walked out of a Boston media agency after my boss stole my concept, filed it under his name, and smiled for the press release. I called him out, and suddenly I was unprofessional. The next day, my email access vanished like I'd never existed. Now I'm on a bus heading north to Casco Bay, Maine, the town I once couldn't wait to escape. My savings barely cover the ticket. The window shows streaks of late summer rain, and every bump in the road feels like an echo of bad choices. A woman slides into the seat across the aisle, mid-40s, sharp gray bob, the kind of calm that comes from managing chaos for years. "Amy," she says, offering a quick handshake. "I coordinate media programs for local schools." I tell her I edit videos, mostly educational stuff lately. She nods with interest. "Sometimes we need freelancers. Send me your reel. We exchange numbers. It feels small, like loose change in a pocket, but I cling to it." By the time the bus stops, the light outside has thinned into evening. My mom's house sits at the end of a quiet street, shingles weathered, porch light burnt out. She's still on a trip with her husband. Texted earlier, "Sorry, flights were cheaper Tuesday." Typical? The door opens before I knock twice. Mason, her husband's son, technically my stepbrother, practically a stranger, leans on the frame. He's in a flannel shirt, wood dust caught in the seams. "Room's yours," he says. "I'll take the garage. If you need something, ask. Or don't I manage a weak smile?" "Good to see you too." He steps aside without answering. Inside, everything smells faintly of pine cleaner and old carpet. The same couch, the same crooked picture of the lighthouse. On the table sits a lamp with a pearly base. I remember it from when I was a kid. I drop my bag, and my elbow clips the cord. The lamp hits the floor, splits clean down the side. "Perfect," I mutter. Mason appears instantly, kneels, and gathers the pieces. No sighs, no scolding. He just says, "Watch your step," and carries the shards to the kitchen. The quiet isn't kind, it's efficient. I unpack the essentials, laptop, hard drive, 2 shirts, and check my email. Nothing but bills and a newsletter from a store I can't afford. Amy's number hovers in my contacts, a faint promise I don't quite believe in. From the window, I can see Mason through the half-open garage door, sanding a piece of wood under a hanging bulb. He moves like someone who understands the rhythm of his own silence. I envy it. Later, I gather the lamp fragments into a shoebox and write on the lid, "I'll fix this." It sounds dramatic, but I need to fix something, even if it's just glass. When I finally lie down, I scroll through the agency's website. My project, my idea, plays under my boss's name. The same tagline I wrote sits there untouched. I imagine commenting under the post, "You're welcome," but I don't. The room hums with the faint buzz of the fridge. I stare at the ceiling and think of all the things I left unfinished in Boston. Rent, pride, and maybe a version of myself that still believed talent was enough. Sleep doesn't come easy, but before I drift off, one truth sticks. I didn't come home to heal. I came home because there was nowhere else left to go. By the 3rd morning back, the house had found its rhythm again, one that didn't exactly include me. Mason brewed his coffee before sunrise, always the same metal mug, no sugar, no music. By the time I came into the kitchen, he was halfway through a plate of toast, scrolling something on his phone with the same stillness he built furniture with. "Morning," I tried once. He nodded without looking up. Not rude, just done talking before the day even began. I spent most of my hours in the corner of my room, editing short clips for small educational platforms. The pay was thin, but the familiarity of the timeline, the neat cuts, the fading audio, kept my hands steady. My screen became a wall between me and everything I didn't want to think about. A week in, I found myself watching Mason work through the cracked door of the garage. The air was full of sawdust and focus. The rhythmic scrape of wood against sandpaper had a strange comfort to it. Measured, human, something I couldn't ruin. One afternoon, maybe out of boredom, maybe out of some misguided urge to help, I started filming. Just a few seconds. His hands steady over the wood, the curl of a shaving, the beam of light catching the grain. I didn't ask. I told myself it was harmless. An artist documenting another. That night, I edited it into a 30-second reel. I posted it with a caption, "Craft isn't dead. It just doesn't have Wi-Fi." By morning, it had a few thousand views. By noon, a local blog reshared it with, "Meet Casco Bay's quiet craftsman." I was proud until Mason found out. He came in holding his phone, thumb frozen on the screen. "You post this?" "Yeah," I said. "It's good press." "People love it." He set the phone down on the counter like it weighed too much. "You should have asked." "I just thought—" "You didn't think. You wanted content." The words hit like sandpaper across skin. "It's just a video," I said, softer. He looked straight at me. "It's my life. Not a trailer." He left the kitchen, the back door shutting behind him. Not slammed, not soft, just final. The next morning, he didn't make coffee in the kitchen. I heard the machine hum in the garage instead. When I stepped out to leave a cup of mine on the steps, he didn't look up. 2 days later, a journalist called the house. They wanted to feature him. The humble craftsman reviving local traditions. I didn't tell Mason. I didn't have to. When I walked past his phone later, I saw the message notification flash a name, Chloe. The article came out the next day. The headline mentioned her, "An unexpected comeback, a craftsman and his old muse." The word muse stuck with me, sharp and misplaced. That night I could hear faint music coming from the garage, old recordings, a woman's voice layered with his guitar. I recognized it from the article's embedded link. I sat in my room, the glow of my laptop cold against my face. I scrolled through the comments under the video I'd posted. "So authentic," one said. "You can feel his soul in the work." They didn't see me behind the camera. Maybe that was for the best. When I turned off the light, I realized something small but solid. He didn't hate the video because it was bad. He hated it because it reminded him someone else was still watching. A week later, the heat in Casco Bay broke with a slow rain. I walked downtown to clear my head, headphones in, podcast murmuring about stories of creative resilience. The irony stung. Outside a small cafe near the pier, I saw a woman tapping her phone against her palm, frustration written all over her face. She glanced up, smiled awkwardly. "You wouldn't happen to have a charger, would you?" I did. I offered it, and while her phone revived, we talked. Her voice had that slightly smoky edge musicians get after years in small venues. When she said her name, Chloe, something shifted. It clicked only when she mentioned an old guitar she was in town to pick up. "You're Chloe," I said before thinking. "From that article." She tilted her head. "You read it?" I nodded. "I live with Mason." The air between us turned cautious, like both of us had stepped into a conversation neither planned. She didn't get defensive, though. "I just want to grab my guitar, that's all. No drama left to dig up." We talked another few minutes about weather, gigs, bad coffee, and she thanked me before leaving. It wasn't a big moment, but I walked home feeling the world had quietly rearranged itself. That evening, I told Mason. I ran into Chloe. He froze mid-motion, the cloth in his hand hovering above a table he'd just varnished. Where? Downtown. She said she just wants her guitar. He gave a small nod, too casual to be casual. Good for her. But that night, through the thin wall, I heard the faint echo of old recordings, her voice, his chords. Not loud, but deliberate. The next few days, things hung oddly between us. He spoke less than usual, worked longer hours. I edited quietly in my room, pretending I didn't care, though my stomach tightened every time his phone buzzed. Then one evening, he asked for help. Need another pair of hands, he said from the doorway. In the garage, the smell of varnish and cedar filled the air. He was shooting photos of new pieces for a website. I held the light while he adjusted the angles. The space was cramped, our shoulders almost brushing. Move the reflector a little, he said. I stepped closer. When he turned, our faces were suddenly inches apart. It wasn't planned. It wasn't even a decision. It just happened. A brief, unsteady kiss, warm and confusing. He pulled back first. Don't make this complicated, he said, voice low, not unkind. Too late, I said, because it was. For a few hours I thought something might actually change. But the next morning, when I walked past his desk, his phone screen lit up. A message from Chloe. Thanks for last night. Felt like old times. The words hit harder than I wanted to admit. That day I didn't edit. I just stared at the screen until it went black. Mason came in once to grab his jacket. You okay? He asked, like someone checking a smoke alarm. Yeah, I said. He nodded and left. Outside, the August air was still thick, but I felt cold for the first time since I'd come back. And I knew, somewhere deep down, that whatever line we'd crossed couldn't be uncrossed, only blurred until it disappeared. 2 weeks later, the summer air turned sharp in the mornings. Mason started leaving early, always meeting someone about the wood shop. I told myself not to ask, that I didn't care anymore, but every time the door clicked behind him, the lie sounded thinner. Amy called that week. Her voice had its usual brisk cheer. Riley, I might have a short contract for you. Educational promo, small budget, but steady work if it clicks. Count me in, I said too quickly. Anything to stay busy. Later that afternoon, Mason came home smiling in that restrained way people smile when they don't want to explain. I met with a producer, he said, grabbing a drink from the fridge. Derek, he saw that stupid video you made and wants to collaborate. I blinked. Seriously, he shrugged. He's not the worst. Just wants me to trust him. It sounded like something he'd been rehearsing. Are you going to do it? I don't know yet, he said, though his eyes had already decided. By Friday, Chloe was back in town. I saw her through the kitchen window, leaning against Mason's truck, laughing at something he said. She carried a notebook, the kind musicians fill with lyrics they'll never sing again. That night, she didn't leave. Her jacket hung on his chair the next morning. My stomach knew the rest before my mind caught up. When Mason came into the kitchen, I didn't bother pretending I hadn't noticed. So she stayed over? He froze for half a second, then said, We talked. That's all right. Not everything's about bodies, Riley. His tone wasn't cruel, but it was worse. Patient, like he was teaching a lesson. I wanted to shout something clever, something cutting. Instead, I just nodded. Good talk. The humiliation didn't burn all at once. It settled in slowly, like bad weather. By evening, I'd convinced myself I was fine. I opened my laptop, stared at Amy's project brief, and told myself I still had control over my own life. But then I saw Mason's hard drive on the shelf, labeled Workshop Audio. I knew it held hours of his recordings, scraps of unfinished music, ambient sounds from his workbench, the kind of material Amy's team loved. At first, I just wanted to listen, maybe to feel closer to what he never shared. But once I dragged the files into my editing timeline, I couldn't stop. The layers blended beautifully with the visuals I was working on. Kids building small wooden models, the hum of creation. It fit too well. I justified it as temporary, told myself I'd swap them out later. I didn't. I sent the draft to Amy that night. She replied within the hour. Perfect tone. You've got the job. I should have felt proud. Instead, I stared at the email until the screen dimmed. That weekend, Mason didn't come home. On Sunday, a post went up from Derek's studio. Something special coming soon, Mason and Chloe back where it all began. A photo of them smiling under studio lights. I closed my laptop, set it aside, and finally admitted to myself what I'd done. I'd taken a piece of him because he'd taken something from me first. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like a mirror, and I hated what I saw in it. A month passed before everything fell apart publicly. It started with a local arts magazine post. The Craftsman and His Muse, a new sound rises from Casco Bay. The photo showed Mason and Chloe in a sunlit studio, smiling like people who never broke anything worth regretting. The article mentioned a past betrayal, a young filmmaker who violated his trust. My name wasn't printed, but it didn't have to be. Everyone who followed the blog knew who'd posted the viral video that started his comeback. I read it twice, then a third time, just to feel the sting fully. When I called Amy, she didn't pick up. A few hours later, she texted, "It's better to stay quiet for now. Derek's funding some of our new programs, and we don't want to complicate things." Complicate things. That's what I'd been reduced to. An inconvenience with a pulse. By evening, I was pacing the kitchen while the radio hummed with static. Mason's truck pulled up. He walked in calm, jacket over his arm, like someone who'd had practice facing the fallout. "You saw it?" he asked. "Yeah." He nodded once. "Then you know why I'm here." I waited for anger, for shouting, but his voice stayed low, almost polite. "You used my recordings, didn't you?" I could have lied. I even started to. "Amy's project needed ambient." He cut me off. "Don't explain. Just tell me if it's true." I exhaled. "Yes, I used them." For a long second, he didn't move. Then he said, "Thank you for confirming it. That hurt more than yelling would have." "I was desperate," I said. "I just wanted to prove I wasn't useless." He gave a small laugh, tired, not mocking. "We all want to believe our reasons make it okay." He turned to leave. At the door, he stopped. "You know, you showed me exactly what I don't want to become." "Mason," but he was already outside. The sound of his truck starting filled the space where I should have said something real. The next day, Amy's assistant emailed me an updated invoice. My contract ended early, due to creative differences. They'd keep the footage, of course. Licensing clause. My name wouldn't appear anywhere near the final cut. By nightfall, my inbox was empty except for spam. My phone didn't buzz once. I sat on the porch, watching the streetlights flicker against the damp air. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked at nothing. For the first time since coming home, I didn't cry. Not because I'd accepted anything, just because I was too tired to keep defending myself. When I went inside, Mason's old lamp sat on the counter. I'd glued the base back together weeks ago, but a thin line still split through it. I plugged it in anyway. The light was uneven, flickering at the edges. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. That night, I realized what hurt the most wasn't the betrayal, his or mine. It was that neither of us had really lied. We'd both just told the truth too late for it to matter. It was early September when Mom came back from her trip. Her suitcase thumped against the hallway wall, followed by that familiar sigh, the one she used when she was too tired to start an argument, but too aware something was off. She found me in the kitchen, hunched over cold coffee, scrolling aimlessly through freelance listings that all required references from prior employers. I didn't have any left. "You look worse than the lamp," she said, setting her keys down. "I didn't know lamps could look bad." She gave a small smile, then sat across from me. "You and Mason had a falling out?" "That's one way to put it." "Do I want details?" "Probably not." She studied me for a moment. "You always pick the wrong people to trust." "I didn't pick him," I said. "He was just there." "That's not an excuse." "You wanted something from him." "What was it?" I thought about it. Respect? A place to belong? Maybe just not feeling invisible again. None of it sounded noble out loud. "I wanted something to work out for once," I said. "And did it?" I shook my head. "No, it fell apart the same way everything else does, slowly, then all at once." She didn't push further, just reached across the table and squeezed my hand once, like a signal that the conversation was over. 2 days later, Mason texted, "Need to grab a few things." "Will be quick." When he showed up, the air outside was cool and gray, the kind of weather that makes you realize summer really is gone. He stepped inside, polite but distant. I hadn't seen him since the night of that article. He moved through the house quietly, packing tools, cords, the half-finished chair from the garage. I stood by the counter, not helping, not stopping him. Finally, he spoke. "We're heading to Portland next week. Derek lined up a deal. Studio time, small tour, maybe? We?" I asked, though I didn't need to. "Me and Chloe." "Of course." He zipped up the last bag, then paused when he saw the lamp on the table. The crack was still visible, though I'd done a decent job patching it. "You fixed it," he said. "Sort of." "It still flickers." He picked it up carefully, fingers tracing the line of glue. "Not everything that breaks has to be thrown out." "I'll keep that in mind." He nodded, set the lamp back down, and took a long breath. Then, almost without thinking, he leaned forward and kissed my temple. It was brief, almost formal, the kind of gesture you give someone you're finally forgiving or saying goodbye to. "Take care of yourself, Riley," he said. "You too." He walked out, loaded his truck, and drove away without looking back. I stood at the window until the sound of the engine faded. The house felt lighter, emptier, not in a cinematic way, just real, lived in, slightly hollow. That night, I turned the lamp on again. The glow trembled against the wall, softer now but steady enough. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry, just quiet. The kind of quiet that means the storm has already passed, even if it left everything in pieces. 4 weeks later, the leaves outside had started to yellow, and Casco Bay smelled like wet wood and low tide. I still woke early out of habit, made coffee, checked emails that never came. The world had moved on without much noise, which honestly felt fair. Mason and Chloe's faces were everywhere for a while. Local papers, a small music blog, even a feature in Portland Scene Weekly. Love and Craft, the revival of Maine folk. I clicked the article once, scrolled halfway, and closed it. The photos said enough. They looked clean, certain, unburdened. Maybe they were. A few days later, Amy's name lit up my inbox. For a second, I thought she might be offering another contract. The email was short, polite, and final. Riley, thank you for your contributions. Unfortunately, we won't be continuing collaboration on future projects. Wishing you all the best, no explanation. No signature flourish. Just corporate distance wrapped in gratitude. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. The files I'd sent her, my edits, my cuts, my mistakes, were now being used under the company banner, with new branding and a shiny logo that wasn't mine. I could prove it if I wanted, but there was no one left to listen. That night, I sat on the porch. The air had cooled enough that I needed a jacket. The town felt smaller, like it had exhaled me. I tried to think of what came next. A new city, a different job, maybe just a break from trying to prove anything. The truth was, I didn't have a plan. For once, that didn't scare me. Inside, the lamp still sat on the windowsill, the one I'd broken and glued back together. When I turned it on, the light flickered faintly, softer than before but still warm. It filled the room just enough to see the edges of everything, not bright, not perfect, just enough. I opened my laptop and pulled up an old project file, one of the early ones from before Boston, before Mason, before all the noise. It was a short video essay I'd never finished, about failure and persistence. The footage was rough, the narration half-written, but something in it felt honest. I added a line to the ending. We all think someone else betrayed us, but sometimes we just ran out of strength to stay honest ourselves. I let the clip render slowly, the fan in my laptop humming like a heartbeat. When it finished, I didn't upload it anywhere. I just watched it once, alone, in that uneven lamplight. Outside, the streetlights flickered on one by one. The sound of the tide carried faintly through the open window. When the screen dimmed, I didn't rush to turn it back on. I just sat there, feeling the quiet as something neutral, not punishment, not peace. Just life continuing, the way it always does after people leave. The lamp flickered again, then went dark. And for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel like an ending that needed fixing.